Scott Bowden and Brian Last right along ringside and ready to go with another big day of the KFR podcast. And Brian, when it comes to memorable episodes, I have a feeling this is going to be a fabulous one, Pally.
That's right, Scott. Today, your tag team partner, Howard Atomic Baum, returns to discuss the abrupt departure of the original fabulous ones, Steve Keirn and Stan.
Whoa there, Pally. Keirn and Lane weren't the originals, technically. That would be Jackie, Donnie, and Roughhouse, the hard-way bleeding, hard-living, hard-drinking, and high-hat-wearing trio that strutted their way into Memphis wrestling immortality by kicking ass and looking fabulous doing it.
For simplicity's sake, I just thought I'd refer to Keirn and Lane as the originals because you're going to discuss one of the rare miscues of your booking hero, Jerry Jarrett.
You stink, Last! You stinky stink!
I'm just saying.
You stink!
So I guess Keirn and Lane were what? The new fabulous ones? By your standards?
No stink face. They were the new originals.
Talk about an oxymoron. Or maybe just a moron.
You stink, Last. You stink! And if I ever catch you wearing sequins and some $25 tuxedo you got down at the Five a Dime, Jimmy Dean, there'll be hell to pay, Pally.
Right.
And no hi-hats. No hi-hats for you.
Okay, no hi-hats. Jeez, you Memphis fans just love some Jackie Fargo, don't you?
Let me tell you something, pal. Jackie's got the heart the size of a watermelon. A watermelon! And he smells fabulous, pal. Unlike you, Stinky.
Uh-huh.
Take a shower, slap on some cheap cologne, hose down, and we'll be right back with a look at the debut of the new and unimproved fabulous ones.
That's Rich and Gilbert. Right?
Stink! You stink!
Or Pork Chop Cash in the Dream Machine. That's it.
Boy, let me tell you something. That burned me up when those two punks wore the hi-hats.
Yeah, you seem pretty upset about the hi-hats.
Oh, damn straight, Pally!
It looked good on the New York Dolls, though.
Don't wear the hi-hat! We'll be right back with more KFR right after this.
Continuing our conversation about tag teams, we told you that Jimmy Hart said he had another big surprise for us, and here he is with it.
Look, can I borrow your microphone? I've got to do this right. I've got to do this right. Come on, y'all guys asleep on the camera. Come on over here. Bring the camera over here. You know, how many times has Jimmy Hart told you he was going to bring the greatest attraction to this area? How many times? Tell me, how many times? And I've always done it, haven't I? I've always done it, haven't I? That's right. I brought you Kamala 1 and Kamala 2. I brought you Handsome Jimmy Valiant, the Valiant brothers, the Graham. I brought you everybody. But I have outdone myself this time. I have really outdone myself this time. Because, ladies and gentlemen, and I use the word ladies and gentlemen very, very loosely out here talking to you now, but I put my mind to work. And I put together, Lance Russell, the greatest team in professional wrestling to date. And I'm going to bring them out. I want you people, come on, I want everybody to stand up. I want everybody up. Everybody up. Come on, you idiot people over there, up. Put your hands together and welcome the greatest team in professional wrestling, the New York Dolls. The New York Dolls, baby! The New York Dolls! Look at them! Aren't they beautiful, Russell? Aren't they beautiful? Come here, boys! Come here, dolls! Come here! Beautiful! Beautiful, baby! Beautiful! The New York Dolls, baby! Aren't they gorgeous? Now, looking at the sheep herders and looking at this is class, man. A touch of class right here. I can't believe this. Boys, I want you, dolls, look, I want you to take your jackets off, and I want you to show all these, I could say lovely, but they sure ain't lovely, all these girls over here, the most beautiful bodies in professional wrestling today, right here. Come on, eat your heart out, baby. Look at this. Come on, pose for them, baby. Look at this. You know, I put together, like I said, the greatest team in professional wrestling in the Dolls. They already have super team. I'm so excited. I got to talk today. Sugar and Eaton are a great team. They're my number one team, baby. And then, of course, I've got Kamala 1 and 2, and they're number one.
Hi, wrestling fans. Certainly good to be back on this TV again. It's been some times, and it's been nice out playing golfing and doing a lot of things that I never got to do as a professional wrestler for 25, 30 years. Real exciting, boy, to get up in the mornings and knowing you don't have to jump on an airplane or jump in a car and go wrestle that night and jump in the car and drive back and drive another 800 miles the next day or get in the airplane with your sore body and your mind really not straightened out yet. It's been real nice, but I talked with my buddy Eddie Marlin. I said, Ed, you know, them days fishing and golfing's about over. I'm watching wrestling on TV and get a little itchy. And that's what I done. I got real itchy. I looked up on my TV and you know what I seen? The worst imitation that I have ever seen in my entire life. Let me tell you something, Hart, Pally. You don't know what a fabulous Fargo is. You have no earthly idea. You bring two geeks, two guys that you picked up off the street, and you want to make them fabulous dolls from New York. You can forget that, Hart. Let me tell you something, pal. You're a joke, and they're a joke. What do you buy? A $2 bottle of dye? Put it on their hair and buy them a $25 tuxedo. Let me tell you something, Hart, you punk. And your two little guys from New York. I sweated many a gallon of blood and sweat to be a professional wrestler, and I'm damn proud of it. And there's only one fabulous Fargo from New York, Pally. That was me and Donnie. The pictures you see with the tuxedos, the high hats, the original fabulous Fargos, and a punk like you, Hart, you're going to come along and steal something that I built up all of my life, that I put my pride and my glory in, something that brought me fortune and fame, Hart. Well, you stink, boy. You stink. Now, I'm going to give you some good advice. I promised Eddie Marlin I wouldn't cuss and raise too much cane on his TV, but I can't help it. You stink, Hart. You're too synthetic. New York dolls. What a joke. Let me tell you something, pal. If there's going to be any fabulous ones around, if there's going to be any hi-hats around and tuxedos around, it's going to be first class, and it's going to be who I pick. Not who you pick, Hart. You stink. You stink. You got nothing about you, pal. $25 tuxedo. What a joke. My socks cost more than that, Pally. When I walked around with the top hat on, with the gloves and the sequins, they cost something, boy. They didn't cost 25 cents. You're disgusting. You're disgusting to me. To think what I've put in the wrestling business and you want to come along with this. Well, let me tell you something, Pally. I went out and got me a couple of guys. Tough. That's what you don't have, Hart. You got to be tough. You got to have a heart. You got to have a heart as big as a watermelon, not big as a peanut, like you and them two geeks you got. Well, Pally, I got me two wrestlers, and I'm going to put the hi-hats, and I'm going to put the tuxedos on them. But you know what they can do that your boys can't do? They can fight. They're tough. And if you slap them, you know what they'll do to you? They'll slap the hell out of you. They're going to do that. You're not going to smack them upside the head and walk off and prance around. Time you get your fist back from their jaw, by gosh, you're going to have one upside of your head. That's the only way it's going to be with me, pal. I'm back. The fabulous Jackie Fargo's back. Not as a manager, as a consultant. I'm going to advise these two men. And when I say men, I'm talking about men, tough, rugged, fighters that'll kick your teeth in, Hart. You better not show up there. You better not show up in the arena with your boys with no tuxedos on and no high hats. You cannot go around imitating me, Pally. I will not give you permission to do that. You have no right, and you have the audacity of you. You little stinky stink. You stink. I got pride. I'm saying this to you right now. I am out of retirement. I want to fight. I want to feel. I want to touch. I want to beat. I want to claw and scratch and dig. That's what I'm known for, and that's what I'll die for. And I'm tough. Don't you forget that, Hart. And don't you boys forget it either. Trying to imitate the fabulous Fargos, you ain't got a chance. I got two of the greatest men that I've ever seen. They're the ones that's going to wear the tuxedos. They're going to wear the top hats. And yeah, they'll be doing the Fargo strut too, pal. And I'll be proud of them. I'll be proud to say, look at that. Look in the wrestling ring. Look. I look back 25 years ago. I see me and Donnie. They're going to get out there and they're going to give some people some hard times, pal. I'm not going to be running around like you, Hart, with a stick and my manager's hat and all that. I don't need it. But I'm going to be the advisor. I'm going to be the consultant. And I tell anybody, I don't care who it is, you must know this in the wrestling. As a professional wrestler, when you climb in that ring, you don't have friends. I don't care who they get in the ring with, or where, what city. If they ever do not take my advice, then I'll back away from them. But I think I've got the team that wants to be the fabulous ones again. And I'm looking forward to it. And I'm telling you again, Hart, don't bring your boys with them little $25 suits on. That's all I got to say, Pally.
And we are back on Kentucky Fried Wrestling. And my blood's still boiling about those damn hi-hats. Anyway, today's topic comes to us from a loyal listener, Philip Dean Wallace. He writes in, I am sure you'll cover it when you talk about the new Fabs, and perhaps Jerry Jarrett has discussed it on his podcast. I've listened to many of them, but haven't heard anything on it yet. But did Jarrett expect the fans to like the new Fabs, or was the angle for them to be hated even as they tried to be faces? Perhaps it was a win-win situation. If the fans had loved them, it would be great. And since they didn't, they had instant heat and potential storylines. I miss those days. Yes, I certainly miss those days too. And I think the promotion missed out on a hell of an opportunity to have a potential feud with the new Fabs against the original Fabs. And of course, I'm talking about, for those keeping score at home, Rich and Gilbert versus the returning Keirn and Lane. However, they'd really kind of already gone that route. You know, they introduced Pork Chop Cash and the Dream Machine has Jimmy Hart's new Fabulous Ones right after Keirn and Lane left, with the idea that Rich and Gilbert wouldn't catch any heat and they would gain the support of the fans because they were going to shut down Hart in his attempt to once again rip off the heritage of Jackie Fargo. And here with me to discuss that issue back in 1984 is my own fabulous tag team partner, Howard Baum. Howard, welcome back to KFR.
Hey, who better? That was quite the soliloquy there, Scott. I didn't realize it was Shakespeare night on the KFR, but
well, as far as
nonetheless, I concur.
When it comes to my intros, that certainly wasn't a fabulous one, but bear with me.
And that was off the cuff, folks. I want you to know that I sprung this topic on him late in the game, and he rose to the occasion. And I think that was quite admirable. I got chills at points. But I concur wholeheartedly. And might I add, I was there. I was lucky enough to see the Fabs in maybe 83 and 85. No, 80. I don't know, 84, 85, whatever. But when they were first there, and then when they returned in 85, they were equally amazing both times. It was lightning in a bottle, and it was amazing. Coolest tag team, coolest stuff I've ever seen.
Lightning in a bottle. Oh, look at you, lightning in a bottle, because they had the lightning bolts on the tights.
Ah, there you go.
I'm sure you meant to do that.
And might I say, my favorite match that I was ever ringside shooting photos of was the Fabs against the Sheepherders in one of these all over the ring brawls, involving every piece of the furniture in the entire building. Because when you shoot a match like this, it's like war photography. Like, Steve Keirn's going to throw Rip Morgan right here, but you're going to stand right there. And if you don't get the shot and move in time, it's going to be you. And that's what I did, because when the better the match was, the more I got into it, the better the photos would come out. And that happened nowhere as much as Memphis and the Fabs in particular. I call it war zone photography.
So, I'm sorry. So were you in? Now you were in Memphis in '83, right? When they were in their prime.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like, I went to '83 before we did the WFAA thing, and then '84, '85 we did that. So yeah, it would have been '83, which we saw the Moondogs feud, amazing. First night in town, saw that week on TV, it was the turn of Bobby Eaton, turned on the Jimmy Hart family, called them a bunch of pussies on live Memphis TV.
What? Wait a minute.
I assume I was there in the studio. Look it up. I can't believe you don't know that.
Who called? What? Bobby Eaton said that?
When Bobby Eaton turned on the First Family in 1983, and I think Coco turned previously, but this is Bobby now, and like it was the Moondogs and Bobby.
Yes,
and I don't know who else.
I was there that night.
And like Eaton turned on the Hart family in this heated thing on TV, and he goes, "'Cause you're a big bunch of pussies."
Wow.
And
Bobby Eaton rarely says anything.
I don't think that made the bicycle tape. I would have to check the archives, but don't think that quite made the rounds. But that was the match. It was Eaton Fabs against Moondogs and somebody. And hey, man. You didn't hire me for my technical ability. I'm not, as I've said, as I claim, folks, I'm not a historian. Please look up dates and cities in your own time.
Yes. That's reserved for geeks and nerds like me.
Thank you.
But you know what? I was there that night because it was summer of '83. And about 8,000 people there. Man, it was summer '83, man. That was a great time to be a wrestling fan in Memphis. Lawler's in his prime, the Fabs are red hot, and there's a battle royal for a Corvette, right? And Lawler's gonna win that fucking thing. He went to a dealership and it's like, hey, why don't we'll give you some promo and the whole deal. But interestingly enough, it comes down to Lawler and Curren. As a nice little, and that was sort of rare in Memphis. I mean, as daring as Memphis could be, it was pretty black and white a lot of times. If they weren't going to do a heel turn, usually a battle royal would sort of come down to maybe two heels working on a baby face. But certainly it was very unique. And Stan Lane was hanging around. He had been eliminated, and the crowd just really got into it. Because they were wondering, because Curren was getting frustrated with Lawler and did some slight heel mannerisms, and Lawler ended up eliminating him. And then Curren gets in there, and man, I don't know, maybe it was a missed opportunity, but they end up shaking hands, and the crowd, and the crowd's just like, yes, like it's one of the greatest moments of sportsmanship you've ever seen. And the Fabs don't need the Corvette. They got the van, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to even get into that story. I tried to do Steve Keirn a big favor, and I don't know if he heeded my advice or not. I said, "Don't show your wife that book." Okay. So anyway, anywho, yeah. As a Florida guy, Steve Keirn is one of the all-time coolest baby faces because he's a heel in real life. He's a natural heel. And like you said, he's rough around the edges. And I believe, like, when I was reading Jarrett's book, the quote was like, he was more rugged. And that's exactly what Steve Keirn was. Greatest forearm smash in the history of the business. And, like, you know, I was friends with Tyree Pride. We did some stuff in the past. And in 1989, there was a PWF show, which was the rebirth of Florida wrestling. It was Steve Keirn, Mike Graham, Gordon Soley, Dusty Rhodes. And Tyree Pride was working the show. And we were all hanging out, me and Steve Keirn and Tyree, and it's the War Memorial in Fort Lauderdale in '89. And Tyree and Steve Keirn walks off, and I'm sure like insulting me for too much cologne or something. And then Tyree looks at me and goes, "Man, once I see Steve Keirn wrestle, I see enough wrestling forever." Put that in the back of your book, people.
Well, you know what? I have a little bit of a Steve Keirn story myself. I was a 19-year-old referee, and as I've explained, you know, I was always hoping that eventually I was going to turn heel. So I was out there refereeing, and I had like a starch polo button down. I was actually pledging Pi Kappa Alpha. This kind of notorious fraternity on campus that was known for womanizers. Actually, my pledge shirt said had like a chalk stick figure, like a guy with like a schoolboy with a cap, and it says, "Dick goes to college, Dick goes Pike, girls love Dick." And so that was our reputation. Nice. At any rate, yeah. So we were kind of like the and seriously, we would go to the football games dressed to the nines, like everyone else is like in, you know, tank tops and cut off shorts and all that kind of stuff, and we were styling and profiling. But at any rate, so I've got all this, and I go in the room, and it's Cornette. First time I ever met Jim Cornette. And Cornette remembers all of this. Which is just bizarre. And Brian Lawler, who's wrestling one of his first matches without the hood, because he and Tony Williams had been working as the Twilight Zone. And they were easily the most talented jobber pair maybe ever in Memphis, because they were doing all these. They were losing every week, but they were working in like maybe one or two Japanese spots that they had seen from, because I was tape trading, and they would do all this stuff that they saw Liger do and Dynamite Kid and all this kind of stuff. It was just, and the casual observer had to go, "What the hell is this?" Because usually the Memphis jobbers were just the absolute worst, like Rough and Ready, right, and Panther, and here these guys are doing lucha moves and all this kind of stuff. So they don't want to beat the new kids for some reason. Like, you know, it's Lawler's son after all. So the deal is, the Keirn's going to give Tony the pile driver, and I'm going to have my back, but I'm going to turn around and catch him, and I'm going to call for the DQ, and then Stan's going to forearm, or no, Steve Keirn's going to forearm shot me, and then Lawler's going to make the save. And they were like, and Cornette looked at me, and he's like, "Okay, you got it?" And I go, "Yeah, okay." And they're like, "Okay, good." And everyone just kind of looked at me, and I went, "Oh, you want me to leave now?" so I leave. And afterward, Brian Lawler came up to me, and he goes, "Dude, after you left, Curren goes, I'm gonna fucking knock that yuppie on his ass." So you know what? It looked fucking fantastic, and I didn't feel a thing.
Excellent.
Yep. And dude, it's so funny too, because it just so happens that this front and second row at TV that day was like this biker gang, and they absolutely hated me, and you can imagine Brian and Tony coming out to Hanging Tough by the New Kids. Oh my gosh. They were just going crazy when they hit the pile driver. And then when Curren gave me the forearm shiver, they came unglued. It was like Hogan with the leg drop. Oh, awesome. Awesome stuff.
Can't believe you didn't get over with the biker crowd. Looked like a natural fit on paper.
Nah,
you never know. Fickle crowd.
I know.
Well, let me tell you one last old Fabs story before we get into the new Fabs, which all this was preamble, folks. We haven't even cracked the nut yet. So, but let me just tell you something ultra cool that I did. It was 85.
What of many ultra cool things you've done in your life?
Oh, exactly. I think that goes without saying. But anywho, I'm going back and forth between the ring and 85. It was the card that had Lawler and Idol against the Freebirds in a bunkhouse match. Harley Race against Phil Hickerson, which was incredibly good. So it was that card, and it was the Fabs against Sheepherders. Yes. So many good pictures that night. It was like such a good on night. So I'm going back and forth between the ring and the dressing room area on both sides, the heel and the face area. And so right then, catches me by surprise. The intermission's over. The Fabs are coming out against the Sheepherders now. So I lived the dream. I joined their cascade, their cavalcade. What do you call it when the president comes in? The road thing. Okay, so I got inside the thing with like 8 cops and the Fabs. It was like the 3 of us and everyone. It was like I was a Fab for a minute. I just joined their thing. It's like I had 1 minute where I could step in the thing or out of it. I'm like, oh, I'm in. And I was in, and it was just me, and I saw like Steve's back, and then stand in front of him, and like right to the ring with the music. Everybody fucking wants you. Amazing. I was like 19 years old at the time. The lights, spotlights, arena was dark, spotlights, and everybody wants you. Me and the Fabs with the police cavalcade. We can edit the right word in later, but that was amazing. That was one of the greatest things I've ever done. Some people say Space Mountain or whatnot, but that was a highlight. That was incredible.
And you were integral to that whole thing.
Oh, everyone knows that. I mean, we don't need to get into all that history.
You know what? And that was at a time because I'm not sure if I was there. I think I was there the week before that night,
which was basically the same card.
But yeah, there were about 10,000 people there the night I was there. And man,
it was packed. It was really packed.
Goes to show you. I mean, Memphis was doing so well. I mean, they were, Vince was starting to promote in town, and every place was losing stars to Crockett and WWF. But summer of '85 was absolutely red hot in Memphis, and they just absolutely brilliant. Idol did his thing where. He wanted more money because he knew it was a hot program. So they were like, "Fine, we'll just use Phil Hickerson," and they didn't miss a beat. And if not, if anything, it made it even hotter, really, because Hickerson was more of a brawler and really a better worker than Idol.
Oh yeah. People, I mean, it's so easy to underestimate a Phil Hickerson. He looks like a big fat bald redneck, but. You look at some of the earlier videos, those tapes from the 70s that are out there with him standing toe-to-toe, brawling Lawler and Dundee and all those guys, being agile like a young Dusty. But when I saw him in 1985, could be because he is an old, bald, fat redneck, that he looked like he was about 55 years old. He might have been like 35 in redneck years, I don't know. But it was Hickerson against Race, and both of them looked 50 at that time. So do the math. Once again, 1985, I think Harley Race was like 42 at that time or something.
And it was a hell of a match. It was a hell of a match. The one I saw.
Oh, they worked around the horn. I saw them in Jackson, and I saw them in Memphis. I think I saw them in Jackson or Memphis 2 weeks in a row. But both amazing matches and filled with action that guys half their age couldn't have done.
Yeah, the one
truly
I saw.
Great matches.
The one I saw, it was almost like a takeoff on the Backlund Valentine finish where the wrong man Harley maybe had him pinned, but they were both bloody, both days, not sure who that, I think they collided. Harley fell on top. Referee was knocked out too, counted 3, and then Hickerson switched over on top of, they executed actually better than Backlund and Valentine did. That's the one I saw. I'm not sure if that's the one you saw or not, but man, yeah,
I saw 2 other matches, and it was great. It was like an old school match/brawl, like plenty of outside the ring brawling and big bumps, in which I detailed earlier. Harley Race fell ass over T-Kel and fell on top of me. because I'm the only guy, apparently, the only wrestling photographer in America that never knew Harley Race did this spot where he flies over the turnbuckle.
That's right.
The photographer.
Because I was going to send that to you, and I didn't do it, but I will.
You have that?
Yeah. Well,
I got to look that up. I got to look that match up. That was a great match. Look that match up, folks. Race and Hickerson.
No, not that match, but it's the Lawler Harley Race 60-minute draw.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because they do it. They start losing the crowd around the 40.
Oh yes. He does it in that match. Yeah. Correct. So, yeah.
No, it's great. And do you know the story of how Phil got into wrestling? And we just did an episode on him, so I don't want to get too much into it, but I briefly covered it during the show. It's pretty amazing because he was a good high school athlete, but was never gonna play pro ball anywhere. And was a heavyset guy working in a factory, and I think they would play maybe some pickup basketball on the lunch break and stuff. And the security guard there, this big guy, was training to be a wrestler, and he goes, "Hey man, you're gonna think this is weird." And he said, "I've been watching you. Have you ever thought about getting into pro wrestling?" And Hickerson was like, "Are you out of your mind?" He goes, "No, I'm dead serious, man." He goes, "The way you move, I don't know, man. I just think you'd be a natural." I mean, how bizarre is that it was that obvious to someone who was probably a longtime fan who was training to do this, and then saw Phil just the way a big guy who could move. And it was so graceful, and that's a big part. It's like Dusty. Like, I hate it when people, Dusty. Yeah, it's easy to bag on him for pushing himself so hard in '85 and '86 and '87. But man, that's that Florida stuff, and '77, '76, '78. Yeah. I mean, when he could move and so smooth, man, just
very electric, very smooth, very athletic.
Absolutely, man. He was, and just fucking, worked hard, and the fans, even if they didn't understand the terminology of working hard, they felt it. You know what I mean? That he was leaving everything he had out there.
The air was electric in those days, and you don't see that stuff much these days. I don't know the last time that I was around anything close to it, but when Dusty was in his prime and Superstar Graham came down, or Terry Funk's kind of heat that he brought, like in the 70s, and King Curtis in particular, like in the 70s in particular, because by the 80s, it was still a more tamer time than the 70s. I'm so blessed, as people say, to have gone just as a kid to experience that vibe that became a part of my DNA, because it was white hot heat every week. And like people today talk about it in the abstract like it was a thing, but I experienced it. When the chairs are flying and like you're trying to balance on a chair and people are fighting and there's a finish going on, and like just pandemonium, legit pandemonium, like near riot conditions, pretty much at the end of any main event Dusty Rhodes match. Yeah. Up until like 1980, easily.
Well, and that's, I talked about that with Bill Dundee. Because I said, Bill, I don't know if you realize, because you guys were traveling so much, because Dutch Mantel told me that they didn't realize how big of celebrities they were in town because they were always on the road. And when they were on the road, they weren't thinking about how big of stars they were or what the ratings were. Nobody talked about ratings. They were talking about the next program, and Dutch and Dundee were trying to become students of the business. And that's all they talked about with Jarrett. Or if they were riding with each other, or they might have a rookie in the car and trying to teach him and talk about some things and maybe try to get him over. And, that's something obviously that was really lost. But I just said, the fact that you guys were there every single week, it felt like you were, part of, Lawler definitely being from Memphis was the home team. I said, but Bill, I'm going to tell you a little story here, and I feel kind of silly doing this, but there was a loser. It was a world title match. It was rare that Lawler didn't get the title shot against Bockwinkel, but that was all part of the heel turn because Dundee got the shot, Lawler didn't, and that was the catalyst for Lawler's heel turn. And because it was a world title match, my parents let me stay up. Because Jack Eaton Channel 5 sportscaster would give the results. And he goes, Dundee and Bockwinkel are still battling for the World's Heavyweight Championship. If that match ends before this broadcast, we will tell you the results. So my parents let me stay up, and the show is signing off, and Mason Granger, the lead broadcaster, the number one broadcaster in town, goes, excuse me, we just got word of the AWA World Heavyweight title match between Bill Dundee and Nick Bockwinkel. Bill Dundee was the winner of that match. And I thought he had won the world championship. He didn't mention the DQ. And so the next morning, my ritual on Tuesday mornings, because the day didn't have internet, I would race. I would watch for the paper guy to toss the paper into the driveway. I would run out in my pajamas, and my dad would tease me. He goes, we've got about 100 rubber bands in the driveway, because I couldn't even wait to get inside. I would take the rubber band off the newspaper and, I'd be in the driveway in my PJs looking at the wrestling results. And I just knew that there's going to be something big about Dundee winning the world's championship. And man, I was crestfallen.
It's amazing how excited you could get for it back then, right? Like every little shred of something that you could get. Like when the results came out or something, if you didn't go to the show, exactly.
But and when I asked Bill, I told Bill that, I said, Bill, I just wonder, fans today, yeah, they're excited, but are they that emotionally invested?
Nah, not anything like that. I used to cut up my mother's sheets, because every Sunday and Thursday, Sunday would be the ad for the show, Thursday would be the results of the show, and I would cut it on their bed, and half the time I'd be cutting the sheets. I don't know how many pairs of sheets I went through. Luckily, my mother was good-natured about it. I still have that stack of clippings to this day. And it was such excitement, because in those days, guys, these days it's an embarrassment. It's a diarrhea shower of professional wrestling everywhere you look. But
somebody damn podcast.
Well, that's part of the problem. I'm here to take care of that. But back then, I remember being genuinely excited, because any insight into the business was amazing. If you could go to an independent show and glean some knowledge about how the big boys did it, you feel like you accomplished something. Maybe you heard a guy say something. Maybe they sucked, so it was a little more obvious what they were doing. And you could see the inner workings of the business from hanging around it being done really terribly. So in those days, wrestlers didn't make a lot of appearances, few and far between, and you'd be jonesing for him as a fan. So you can imagine my excitement around 77-ish, I want to say. Rock Riddle, professional wrestler, is going to be on Fernwood tonight. I'm like, oh, we're going to get something now. And we didn't get anything. But that ended up being the one wrestler appearance that I can even think of in the entire 70s.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, I remember. I think I can remember every time that I met Lawler as a fan. The first time was at a softball game, and my dad's brother was friends with Danny Dunn. Danny Dunn Transmissions. I'll fix your car right and at a reasonable price. And Lawler would do the commercials, and so that was my uncle's claim to fame, that he knew Danny Dunn. And so not only did I get to go to the softball game, but he brought in, and my uncle was troubled. Let's just say had a lot of problems in his life, and died very young. Was hit by a train. And he didn't have a lot to be proud of, but he was proud that Jerry Lawler knew who he was and was sort of a friend. He talked about it for ages when Lawler picked him up at his house, because I think Lawler picked up Danny Dunn and then went to pick up my uncle David, who I called Dee Dee. And Dee Dee had just a heart of gold. Let's just say that. And I remember just being so. It seriously, it was like me. I could only guess that it would be like a kid meeting Mickey Mantle. you know, and it sounds ridiculous because it's a professional wrestler in a softball game, but I just remember being so tongue tied around Lawler.
Yeah.
You know, and then the second time I think.
How old would you have been at this time?
I want to say 7 or 8. 7.
Right. Yeah. So it's even more intense.
Oh yeah.
I remember being 10 years old. I mean, my first exposure to wrestling when I was 9, but I went to my first show when I was 9. First live show, first exposure when I was 9. But in 1976, I was 10, and they had this sports expo at the Miami Beach Convention Center, and Dusty Rhodes was supposed to be there. And in those days, I would have cut off my leg to meet either him or Superstar Graham. You know, I just thought, like, I didn't even like good guys, but Dusty had so much, like, he was Florida wrestling, and I would have, like, killed to meet those guys. So I didn't go, because I wasn't the kind of kid that, like, begged his father to go to every stupid thing. And it turns out Dusty no-showed it anyway, so it never even happened. But that was, like, so amazing to get a chance to be around somebody like that. That just would never happen. It was like a fantasy world that you couldn't get into, that you were not, you know, you didn't have access to.
Yeah. I mean, it is bizarre because it's just racing through I can remember, I think almost every time that I met Lawler in public, because you're right, because it could be, well, because it was rare, and I was a big mark.
Of course, I could totally see that. Like, you know, I like when it comes to certain names, I can remember every time, chronological order.
And one of the proudest moments was when, because I was that guy, you know, because I was trying to find the pattern of how to get into the business potentially, and I knew that you know that writing at an early age was my thing, and I remember just being fascinated by who I thought his name was Jim Cornetti. I was like, oh, he's got the best job in the world. And then when I saw him, you know, eventually do his thing, I was like, okay, so maybe I can get in that way. So I started writing. Yeah. I started doing the write-ups, and I would send them to the aftermags, and they were getting printed. And I wrote one of Lawler against Dundee, and they had pictures of them both. And I took that to an autograph signing, and I showed it to Jerry, and he goes, oh, nice. And I go, and I pointed at my name. I go, that's me. And he goes, oh. And I kid you not, my friend. I'm in line. This is a line of people waiting for autographs. Lawler read the entire thing.
Huh.
And signed it, you know, to my pal Scott.
Yeah, nice.
Because that is, but the fact that he read it, dude, what a babyface move that was.
Right. But by the same token, you think Jerry Lawler's not going to read something about Jerry Lawler?
Well, it's bizarre, you know, because my big break to get into the business, I was doing a magazine article on Brian Lawler. And this is still now I'm jumping way ahead, obviously here. And you know, because I was friends with Kevin Lawler, I had this backstage access, and everyone was very open and not really honoring kayfabe. The only two people who really kayfabed me, Dave Brown and Jeff Jarrett.
Wow.
But Lawler
and Dave Brown sure had it in for you from day one, man.
Well,
I gotta tell you.
Yeah, well, he thought I was a nice young man who was, you know, just going to Memphis State at the time. This is even way before that. But he would not. I would kind of, you know, ask these smart questions, and he was not having it.
Wow.
Jeff Jarrett did the same thing. I would love to see an annoyed Dave Brown in a way that is almost harder to come up with than an annoyed Lance Russell. Very few examples of an annoyed Dave Brown, especially without a Scott Bowden standing next to him. I think those are really rare. I think maybe with you in the scene, we see a little more of annoyed Dave Brown. I have a feeling. Oh man!
No, but he's a great man.
Yeah.
He's a class act, obviously.
I mean, dude, and you know, he doesn't do many interviews about wrestling. And for him to do my podcast, and it was like a few days after my sister died, it just meant the world to me. And and he was open. He talked about everything, and he actually was looking forward to it because he goes, I really want to address this because a lot of people think that Adam West was drunk when he did that deal with Lawler, and he was sober as a judge. But a lot of people forget that that was the character, that was his take on the Batman character. So he was not inebriated at all,
which is true.
Yeah. So
he got his whole shtick from Lou Kippelman anyway. So
Captain Lou. Captain, is it true that girls just want to have fun? Oh, Captain, my captain.
Can I take
so, folks,
the fifth
this is
on
apparently
that?
the extended padded episode of the new Fabulous Ones.
I think
maybe we can get on track before I have to put my egos in. Well, at least give the people some closure. I'll give the people some closure. We got to get into the new Fabs. That's what started this whole thing.
Yeah. So the new Fabs now. Obvious, I asked Jarrett about this. I've talked about it in private with him, but I also asked the question during the Memphis Roundtable in Charlotte years back. I remember being so nervous because I was just singing the praises of the promotion, but I honestly felt like I had to address it, and I said I think we can all agree probably one of the rare miscues. Bring it in, and he's like, well, they had to do something. They were so worried. They act like, in hindsight, they act like they weren't worried about Vince. They were, and with the Fabs leaving, that's almost the equivalent to Lawler jumping, in a way. I mean. They were just so over with. It's rare. It's rare to have a meal ticket like that, an attraction like that that opens up the demographic. Because seriously, the demographics of the Saturday morning audience changed, and it definitely changed at the Coliseum.
Now, it was sick. Cute girls jumping around.
Oh man! Just suddenly, they were they were like rock stars.
And
it didn't hurt. Lawler didn't miss a beat, and then that also served as the catalyst for the aging babyface Dundee to do his remarkable heel turn, which he was just tailor made to do. And it also ushered in this new era of the music videos. Now it is laughable in hindsight. I am telling you, man, when we didn't have any idea who these guys were, the strobe lights where you couldn't get a good look at them when Fargo introduced them. I mean, it just absolutely pure gold. It was brilliant for the time. And again, it influenced so many other promotions. I mean, I think Joel Watts had wet dreams about the Fabulous Ones and then tried to recreate all their videos later on.
Do you remember in the beginning there wasn't even a word for them? They didn't call them videos. Jimmy Hart used to come out and be like, man, you think Jerry Lawler's got a special? Yeah. I got a special, baby.
Yeah.
They call them specials,
Yes.
Which is crazy because MTV was calling them videos 3 years before that, but that's beside the point.
Brian Lawler, when he did his thing where he picks up the homeless guy. And here I'm laughing at that, but it was a classic video. It really was. And Brian was such a natural heel performer. God bless him. But he was saying, well, what are we going to show now, Dave? That's right, we're going to show the Brian Christopher special. Because Brian grew up, watching the show, and
it had to be in his DNA for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was very rare that they ever said video, even though that was the MTV vernacular,
Yeah, which is odd. Jimmy Hart, Mr. Music Man, the Sammy Davis of professional wrestling.
So, what are your thoughts about now? gosh, the problem. There are a lot of problems here. It's hard to replace. It's like bringing somebody else in to be the king. It's just almost.
Well, I liken bringing in Eddie and Rich to replace Stan and Steve. Like if Jerry Lawler broke his leg again and they brought Gary the King Lawler in.
Well, come on, wait a minute now. No, look.
And then Eddie Marlin would come out and go, I've known this man for a long time. That's it. That's all the Eddie Marlin I can do.
I think it would be closer to bringing in Carl Fergie, maybe, to be the new king.
Gary Lawler would look better on the poster, though. I mean, if you don't have good eyesight, you're easy pickings.
Oh, boy. I remember the first time I saw that. For those of you who don't know, I guess after Jarrett and Bruiser's relationship, Dick the Bruiser, it fell apart. And, God, what was it, 83? Something like that?
Yeah, something around there.
They found a dead ringer for Jerry Lawler. And I guess, it's not too hard to copy Lawler's attire. But man,
the new improved king now with 30% more pudginess.
Yeah, but if you're kind of looking out of the corner, it looks a lot like Lawler.
Yeah,
and
he had the goatee down. He had the basic head structure.
Oh my gosh! But anyway,
he had the singlet, of course.
But I guess they were really banking on the hatred of Hart and getting all the heat on Cash and the Dream
Machine.
But it really, man, I think Stan Lane explained it best. He goes, by the time we came back, you had the Hart's Fabulous Ones wearing our stuff. You had Rich and Gilbert wearing our shit. And we come back, and it diluted the fucking gimmick.
Oh, yeah. Please. Well, what's hilarious about it? I mean, of course, the entire saga of the Fabulous Ones is told from the position of Fabulous One Jackie Fargo sitting drunk on his Goyish couch. And once you see Jackie Fargo and his couch, you know that it's on because something big is going to happen. So he's like, first on TV, he's like, you might have not seen the Fabs around here for about 6 weeks. And, as you said earlier, all the reasons that led up to it, they went against the Jackie Fargo code, the Fabulous Ones code and all that, and we don't cotton to that. So he's like, but I got something brewing, and I'm going to let you know. I'm on the hunt. So 2 weeks later, he comes back, or whenever it is, and he's on the couch again. And
I don't think he'd ever left the couch, really.
I
think he just had a bottle, and he was calling around the country, maybe.
I know, whenever they happen to need him for a big angle. So now, they worked the PYTs, I think, in their first match, and
No.
Okay, see, this is where we need Scott.
Listen, they did everything they could, right? Who better for them to go in and steamroll with the Moondogs?
I must have missed that. Yeah, so they were trying to recreate the whole original.
No, they were just telling you, these new Fabs come in and
they're badass.
Yeah, dude. And if you look back at the results, Rich and Gilbert never lost at all until they dropped the belts to the Mid-Southern Spoiler, Frank Morrell and Phil Hickerson.
Right.
Seriously, they went 3 months without losing, and the fans still hated them.
Yeah, because so the video that I have that has all these highlights, they're a little more condensed. They move the angle on a little more. Apparently, I didn't know they lasted that long, to be honest. But the first interview that I saw was they come out on TV. I think it was after a PYT match. They go right into damage control because the whole territory is crapping on them. And so they're out there, and then they're in the black floor to, they're in the long black tights with the lightning bolts and the tux jackets and everything. Tommy Rich is out there with his hair curtains, like he's a bass player from Procol Harum or something. And I don't know how he walked around like that in real life, like how that's a look. The English call that curtains, All those prog groups, that's known as curtains.
It was certainly curtains for his career at that point.
Oh, my goodness gracious. So they're out there, and Rich is like, when my daddy left, and my mama started bringing all these guys around the house.
Yes.
And, I got mad at all these guys. And then I realized, well, it's really my daddy that I should be mad at because he's the one who up and left. So don't be mad at us. And here he is in head-to-toe Fabulous Ones gear. He goes, we're not trying to replace Stan and Steve.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, my God. You're not trying to replace Stan and Steve. I mean, like if me and Pete Letterberg came out there, like dressed as Ricky and Robert, like, we ain't trying to replace Ricky or Robert or nothing.
Which at one point was in the cards, from what I understand.
Exactly, I know. Jarrett was so high on us, man. Pete fucked it up with a drug test, but
I think Pete could cut a better promo than Robert Gibson. But
it's 50-50. You know what's so funny? I mean, Gilbert and Rich just did not look right together to begin with. There was no chemistry between those guys, and it was kind of a waste of two good Memphis names because Rich had some fan support behind him. Gilbert certainly did. And through the entirety of the angle, everybody was still with Rich. And when he began his subtle turn, all of his things that he was saying sounded reasonable and plausible. He's like, well, Rich won the IWA belt from Mr. Ito, the international belt from Mr. Ito. Look at me. I did my research. I'm a regular Scott Bowden over here. He won the Southern belt from who?
Bundy. No, Rude.
Oh, cool. No, it might have been Bundy.
God, it's gonna bug me.
I think it was Bundy because I just watched that stuff.
All right. But he gets an assist from Lawler in one of them. I know that.
Yeah. So anyway, like Gilbert's on the outs now. Instead of rebuilding their tag team, Rich is winning these titles. But Gilbert comes out there and he starts giving these sincere interviews, and he's like, Tommy doesn't have time to invest in our team and blah blah blah. And he gives one of those earnest babyface Memphis interviews. Plus, they already like him better than Tommy, right? You would know that better than me, but that's definitely the vibe that I got.
Well, yeah, because Eddie, we saw basically. I think what happened, everyone loved Tommy when he first started, and my sister adored him, and he was a rising star. But then he left and went to Atlanta, and Eddie,
right?
We saw Eddie kind of grew up and develop into a man, I mean, he was a second generation guy, so he was hanging around as a photographer. People would see him at ringside as a kid. I mean, he was our guy. I think they honestly, because if they wanted to do the deal where this was going to springboard, I guess they were trying to salvage it by going, well, this could be the thing where we can finally turn Eddie heel, which is what he's always wanted to do.
Right.
He's always wanted this position, with Lawler. So we're going to make the best of a bad situation. I almost think that the way the fans hated Tommy, I think they should have just turned both of them, had a feud with the Fabulous Ones. But maybe that
would have been amazing.
But
I mean, I think that's the only thing that would have been cool and popped me at the time to make them look anywhere near cool is if they had some spectacular brawls with the Fabs and came up to their level in everyone's eyes, which never would have happened. But even if they came down and worked each other, they never would have been Stan and Steve, not in 1,000 years.
Well, and here's the thing too: that the timing of it was off because at one point, and this is according to Meltzer. They were building toward that big June 1984 show that it went through a lot of different name changes. At first, it was called Starcade, and then it was called Star War, and then I think it was Star Wars and then Star War. So they might not get in trouble with the Lucas folks like they were watching local wrestling shows. But apparently, it was supposed to, they were bringing Flair in to wrestle Tommy. And so that was why Tommy was getting that singles push because they were going to have Lawler and Idol against the Warriors and Flair defending the title against Rich. And
that makes sense.
And Eddie was going to interfere and cause Tommy to lose. But what happened, they realized that WWF had only sold about 200 tickets 2 days before the show. And so and Dusty was on the undercard too. So Jarrett, having balls of steel, canceled Flair and canceled Dusty because he goes, I don't need you now.
Right.
And they really did. They probably would have sold it out had they had, but I was there that night. That was the night that Randy Savage pile drive Ricky Morton through the table. And I swear to God, I looked at my friend and go, oh my God, he's dead. I mean, I was dead serious.
For the time, that was amazing. And not only that, folks, those tables are like oak trees. Those tables are thick. Those tables are like women at the no, let me give a better one. Those tables are thicker than the ladies that fucked. Oh, fuck it. Forget it. Make up your own folks jokes. Good night. Well, all right, that's it for Howard.
Well, there's got to be a Miss Coffee joke in there somewhere.
Well, now that I'm here, I want to do like an in-depth dive on the behind-the-scenes characters of Memphis people, the Coffees, and all these people that you see running around behind the scenes, and who they are and everything, like Teeny and Joe Coffey, the behind-the-scenes characters
Coffee, not Joe Coffey.
I know, I always do that. I swear to God, I always do that. But those are great people. Guy Coffey and his wife. I've got to do some kind of trick so I can like reverse that, some kind of behaviorism or something, because I always do that. Anywho, yeah, I want to like do a deep dive on all these behind the scene characters that are a part of the Memphis wrestling scene.
You can forget about it this week because we're doing the new.
Well, I mean, it's already a 9-hour Patreon special at this point. I mean, come on. But but I just have one more button to put on the whole new Fabs thing. Is that when it was like Jackie's the dad, and now it's only him and Tommy on the couch, and they don't know what they're going to do because Gilbert has gone rogue and all this, and so Fargo's going to come out and he's going to team with him now, and he goes, "Don't let appearances fool you," because I didn't write this quote down, but let me see if I can paraphrase or remember. He's like, because conditioning and athleticism are a way of life with me, Pally.
Well, now wait a second now. I got to stop you right there, Pally, because
am I casting aspersions?
Well, I've heard Brian Last kind of, he's trying to do Fargo a little bit and almost playing it for comedy. I want to say this. His interviews were not polished, especially at that point in his life. But man, they were believable. They really were.
Definitely. He's the quintessential Memphis because it was believable / comical in one. It's like he's drunk, he's old, he's whatever, belligerent, whatever. He's a boisterous redneck, but everything he's saying is real. Like how much more to connect. Him connecting to his people is like Dusty connecting to his people. It's like he's speaking their language. Well, absolutely.
Well, because Brian at one point kind of made fun of Fargo. He's like, I can't think of what to say about Hart, so he says that he stinks. And I go, no, that's great, because he's so angry because the New York Dolls, who stole, that was the whole catalyst for creating the fabulous ones, Lane and Curren, because Jimmy Hart's New York Dolls with the cheap tuxedos, and Fargo apparently was really upset about the hi-hats.
It's funny what people like cling to in this business, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the color orange is mine. Sorry, I own orange now.
But Fargo, he goes on and on about, he mentions the hi-hats, I think, like 3 times, and then he closes with, and they're not going to come out there with these 50-cent tuxedos. They're going to come out there looking nice, and you better believe they're going to have the hi-hats.
Oh my God, he's obsessed with the hi-hats.
But he gets so frustrated with Hart. He goes, Hart, you're just so evil, and you're synthetic, and you stink. You stink.
He goes, you stink, Pally. And then they come back to Hart in the studio, and he's like, I stink. Do you hear that, Lance? So I remember being in the studio when that actually happened. When Hart was out there with his first family, Bundy, Carl Von Hess, I don't remember who else, and there was a dropout in the audio, which is ironic for us behind the scenes. We're obviously going to have a big chuckle because I'm telling this story for the second time because we just had an audio dropout. Behind the scenes, ka-ching. There's one for the Patreon. Anyway, Hart's out there with Bundy and the first family, and Jackie Fargo is calling in his interview, and they're showing it on the TV, and they're playing it in the studio, and we're all watching it, and he's like sitting on his couch. It was a long interview, and he's like, "And Hart, you stink, Pally, you stink." And then we get back to the studio, but there's an audio problem, and Hart tries to laugh it off like he always does, but the audio doesn't come on immediately. And so Carl Von Hess or Bundy or somebody makes the save, probably Bundy, because Carl Von Hess didn't really joke around that much, I don't believe. But he's like, "What? What do you say? You stink." And then Hart got back up to speed. I don't remember if it was an audio glitch or something, but Hart's like, "I stink, baby." And they got back into the rebuttal interview. But so you're talking about how Brian doesn't like that moment where he says, "You stink." And again, I say that's no. Let me just say, I say that's quintessential Jackie Fargo / Memphis once again, because it's not that polished. It does sound real, but at the time, I remember thinking, I'm waiting for a really good word to come out, and he's like, "You stink," like a kid, like a child would say. So you're both completely right.
But what's odd about it is that clearly his anger has got the better of him, right?
Yeah, and he can't even think. He's so mad he can't even think, like in real life.
But I think I had the order wrong, because I think he says, "Hart, you stink it," but he closes it with, he goes, "They're not going to be like your synthetic New York dolls," and that's a pretty strong close right there, partner. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So in hindsight, what have we learned here? They should have never tried.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line.
Basically, what they should have done. I think Jarrett was savvy enough to realize that they weren't going to get over anywhere else quite like they did in Memphis. I think they drew some good money in the AWA, but they were almost better suited to be heels there. That was almost probably the worst place for them to go.
Yeah.
And then
that would have been interesting. Yeah, they would have been like two Steve Regals, but with personality and working ability.
Yeah, and I don't know what the problem was with the Road Warriors. I guess they were supposed to win the world titles, and then it turned into a shoot. If you believe telling the story, which I can almost. They wanted no part of. No, I've seen the video right along with them both telling the story, and seems very plausible. It's like, there it is. Just they're telling of the story. The first match between the Fabs and the Road Warriors, I went to it, and I talked about that because, man, how about this for a dream card? The very first time Lawler wrestles Randy Savage is the main event, and the first time the Fabs meet the Road Warriors on the same card. Dude. That match, I think the very beginning aired in a special later on, but I don't think I've ever seen the complete first match from the Coliseum from December of '83. That was I remember as a kid thinking, I know that wrestling is maybe not. It pains me to say this, like not 100% on the up and up. That looked like a real fight. I mean, in other words, it was incredibly stiff.
Well, yes. Let me tell you something. Road Warriors in those days were incredibly stiff.
No, I know.
82 or 83. I want to say 83.
But Curren
came down to work. But they came down to work. Buzz Sawyer and his brother, and man, the Road Warriors were a force of nature in those days when they first came out. Like, the closer they were to looking like a biker gang, that's the closer they were to pure raw, like, fury.
Well, that was the key to getting them over, because the matches had to be short. They shouldn't look like they shouldn't be great matches, because these guys aren't wrestlers. They're post apocalyptic warriors, who just are going to just, beat you to death. And that's basically what they said that they were going to do. It's sort of like with Kamala, the fact that he was the shits as a wrestler was a strength in that character, because he looked like he had never been in the ring before. And maybe that's a bit racist, but hey, it certainly clicked. I always cringe when I hear somebody say, "Oh, I know that sounds a bit racist, but," because there really is no getting around the Kamala gimmick.
Right. But you know what? I was a huge mark for that. I was already shooting ringside in 1982, and shows you how much of a mark I was even at that point. And Kamala came down to work Dusty. I swear to God, I've always been into that, like, African mythicism, and I collect African art now because I just think there's a lot of power and stuff within all that mystery, all that voodoo stuff.
Because of Kamala?
And I was a nut. No, because I was into that stuff earlier because my parents had statues when I was a kid in New Jersey.
Of Kamala?
Just, like, made him. Oh God, he's not. That's going to be the new catchphrase. So anyhow, yeah, I was taken aback. I mean, when I saw Kamala, I thought I was enough of a mark at that time to think that Jerry Jarrett's backyard was the deepest, darkest Africa, and when I saw Kamala live, I thought he was a savage. Call me crazy, but that's
a lot of strange characters hanging out in Jerry Jarrett's yard. Kamala, Apocalypse, Jim Barnett. Anyway. So yeah, the Fabs, when the new Fabs break up, and the timing of it, it got thrown off because the Flair date got canceled. So when Steve Keirn and Stan Lane returned to be partners with Lawler against Rick Rude, King Kong Bundy, and I don't know if I ever figured out who this jabroni was. This guy with the makeup called the Animal. Certainly wasn't. He worked UWF in Memphis, and that was the end of him. Like Mark Reagan, they had the same career trajectory. But I love that though. Like Lawler's, he's desperate. He needs, the only two guys who can help him. Not the two fabulous ones at his doorstep. He has to go and get. The original, and so they start calling them the original fabulous ones, and suddenly Tommy Rich and Eddie Gilbert are just Rich and Gilbert. So they dropped the name before the split, which was really odd. So clearly, I think that that was the it was all going to steamroll and happen sooner. To get Rich in contention for that world title shot against Ric Flair, and then Eddie was going to spoil it. And I do have to say, Howard, and this is probably the first of many times I will be correcting you in the future. Tommy Rich defeated Rick Rude to win the Southern Heavyweight with an assist from Jerry Lawler.
Congratulations.
And we will close with that. You know what? I will say this though. It was tough sledding for the new Fabs, but the angle with the PYT that I think it was in Nashville where they had that crazy bloodbath that almost turned the tide a little bit, and then they followed that up with Meltzer. I think called it one of the best matches of the '80s, the Falls Count Anywhere match at the Mid-South Coliseum with so they were starting to kind of turn the corner a little bit, and honestly think if they had just come in as a tag team and not worn, because Tommy Rich is just he had a clumsy charisma that the girls liked, the guys liked, but he didn't have it. He had no class, and so for him to try to pull off. And Eddie was just perfect example of this. After I don't know how I remember it, but it stayed with me because Eddie eventually developed into a great interview, but it did not come naturally to him as a babyface or a heel. They had that big brawl, right, that they shoot, which is totally designed to get them over as like tough guys, and you got to respect these two, right? That big brawl with the PYT, and the PYT are out there doing an interview. Rich and Gilbert run out and jump them, and run them off. And Tommy, does his incoherent, somebody say something about crazy time, da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
And it sets up the Falls Anywhere because it's like, we don't care where we get you, da-da-da-da-da. And Tommy kind of walks off, and Tommy has ripped his shirt off like Hulk Hogan, but without the pectoral muscles. And Eddie slowly unbuttons his shirt. it was so lame. And then he goes, yeah, like Tommy said, we don't care if we see you down at the mall or maybe at the service station. We're going to be after you
service
guys.
station.
I know. And it just
The gentleman brawler.
Yes, and he, and then probably quickly button his shirt back up as he was.
Oh my God.
Walking off camera. And they wore those shirts. They always wore these airbrush T-shirts that said "Totally Awesome."
Oh wow! That was way back there in the recesses of my mind. That's correct. I wonder what carnival they got their gear at.
Man, oh man, they were doomed to failure. But everybody certainly remembers the new Fabulous Ones. And if anything, it did put Eddie on that level eventually. To be where fans accepted him as a main event player. I was there when he beat Jerry Lawler in a Texas death match for the first time to win the Southern Heavyweight title with an assist with a towel soaked in ether. And Randy Savage even tried to stooge it off, and Eddie attacked him afterward, and just some brilliant stuff. And Eddie was off and running. So not necessarily an auspicious beginning, but it certainly turned into a fabulous run as a heel for Eddie Gilbert. And really, that's the Eddie Gilbert that we remember today, the hot stuff character. Maybe not the perm.
Yeah.
Maybe not the perm, but,
well, in a way, I think he needed to get out of Memphis, do the UWF thing, and I think that's where he really blossomed a little. And but at that time, he was too boyish. He was not a fit for the Stan and Steve thing. And, I was thinking when I was going to put my thoughts together for this, I'm like, okay, shouldn't have been Rich and Gilbert. If they wanted a team, let them be singles, whatever. But they shouldn't have even been part of that equation. But then what if they made another team out of them? What if they found a couple of other guys? And then I said no again, because anyone in that position would have been crapped upon. There's nobody that could have been in the Fabs position.
Yeah,
at that time. So there's just no argument about it that there's no way that you could have another Fab. That's just not an option.
Well, and I think Jarrett. I'm paraphrasing here, but after observing how red hot Lawler was, after it was unfortunate that Lawler broke his leg in 1980 and was out for the year, but ultimately it was probably best for the long run because how can I miss you if you don't go away? And the bond between
life,
and the bond between
you think something's a setback, and it ends up being your biggest break.
Yeah, and the bond between Lawler and the fans grew stronger when he came back, because at one point he rebroke the leg, and there was a danger that he was not going to wrestle again. And in 1980 they actually had, Jerry Jarrett pulled out one of the best years of booking. They didn't sell out the Mid-South Coliseum, but they had some damn good houses, and they did a lot of different stuff that you wouldn't see when Jerry Lawler was in charge, and a lot of it worked. But by the end of it, when you start looking at October, November, the crowds, they were just dying for Lawler to come back, and when he did, that place was on fire. It led to that great year of 1981, and 1981 also saw Curren come in, and I thought Curren was over with me as a kid, just right from the beginning, because he was in shape, good looking guy, but he was soft spoken and talked tough and could brawl. He was tailor made for Memphis because he was real.
Yeah, totally. He was him and Slater and all those guys, and Mike Graham used to get in fights in Tampa, and they were like the tough guys and all that. Steve Keirn, like I said, he's a real life heel. He's one of my all time favorites to watch.
Even Stan Lane, I love the way that they turned Stan Lane babyface, because Stan to me almost like that Rick Rude natural heel charisma.
Exactly.
They tried to turn Rick Rude
like a stripper heel.
Yeah, or like that sleazy character in Boogie Nights, who turns on Dirk Diggler into to coke and all that kind of stuff, or they rob the drug dealer. Maybe not that sleazy, but Stan Lane turns
kind of an almost dare I say Joey Ryan vibe for the time.
So is it maybe? Yeah, but give me Stan Lane any day. But Stan doesn't make a baby. He doesn't have a change of heart. doesn't, go out to save a baby face because he thinks it's unfair that there's a beatdown. A fan doesn't write a letter asking him to change his ways or anything like that. He suspects that Hart is ripping him off. It's all about money with this guy.
Yeah. See. Let me give you a sidebar. I was just watching an angle between Alan Kawaji and Sir Oliver Humperdinck based on the same thing. So now he'd continue being the same asshole he was before, but he's short in his check, so hence he's going to turn on Humperdinck or Hart. And now the fans are with him, like, oh, he's fucking him on money. But he was content to be the same asshole he was last week. In a way, the good guy's ass.
In a way, it worked with Lane because I don't know if the fans would have bought it otherwise. Because they could buy him getting pissed off at Hart over money. I don't know if they would think that a playboy like that would have compassion, to make a save for somebody. That's true. I thought it was great stuff, and I think they even did a deal too where the baby faces were slow to trust Lane. For a few weeks.
I think that's helpful. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, no,
absolutely.
And again, I just think it's one of those great things that made Memphis so special. Let me tell you something. Even Florida, when somebody would turn, all of a sudden they're embraced. All of a sudden there's hugs in the ring. There might be like one moment of reticence during the match where there was a turn, and then from that point on, Manny Fernandez and Dusty Rhodes are embracing Bugsy McGraw like an equal. After 2 years of being a heel, after one night, they're like, oh, he's with us now. Like, they're all over each other. Well,
I don't get these turns. If I was a booker, I'd be a little more psychological about it, like they did with the Terry Funk turns and all that, and be like, listen, I know you don't trust me. And like Memphis, made a career on that, the whole "you don't trust me" angle. But that's for another time and place.
Well, yeah, and when Lawler first turned babyface, and he's kind of doing his Dusty Rhodes thing a little bit, he and Tojo are suddenly partners, and Tojo starts the interview and kind of goes on and on and on, and finally he finishes it, and Lawler goes, Tojo, just have to say, if we're going to be tag team partners, I'm going to be the one doing all the talking. And it was a heel move, but the fans bought it because it's not like he suddenly changed, and he still called Lance Banana Nose a little bit, and because otherwise it would come off. He was thrust into the situation where Sam Bass and Phil Hickerson and Don, I believe it was Al Green, turned on him because they were bounty hunters for Jack Briscoe, which probably Briscoe knew nothing about. They were using his name like that.
Uh-huh.
But so Lawler and Tojo are thrust together, but Lawler's not going to come out and automatically start changing his personality. Yeah, they want him to get over as a baby face, but he can't, immediately just start kissing babies. You know what I mean? He's got to go through this.
I think you just nailed the appeal of Lawler because he's really a heelish babyface.
Oh, yeah.
Like he carried that through. Like you totally nailed it. Like, you have to be a good heel before you can become a good face and all that. But really, in his case, he kept that cockiness with him, and he just inflicted it on his opponents as opposed to the audience.
Yeah.
And that's what made him that cool, kind of cocky, cool heel, because he was like joking and making fun of people.
Yeah, dude. There's the best thing I can say about Lawler as a performer. Well, one of the many things, right? If you look when he gets done with an interview and he's really high on himself, the way he walks off camera, dude. You know what I mean? It is the cockiest.
Yeah.
I mean, Vince McMahon has nothing on it because Vince McMahon it's too over the top. It's forced. It's comical. Lawler walks like he's the quarterback of the football team who just won the state championship, and he's fucking all the cheerleaders, which is probably would be his dream. But
if not actual reality.
Hey, on that note, we're going to close this episode of Kentucky Fried Wrestling, and I think it's safe to say it indeed was a fabulous one with our guest Howard Baum, who is going to be here.
Can I say one thing before you cut me off?
Well, that depends.
I just want to make sure I get one word in before the end of this broadcast. Caravan. We're looking for a presidential caravan. Thank you.
Caravan. Yes. I'm glad
There's the much needed closure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Internet.
I think you mean motorcade.
That's it.
No, I was looking for the C one. I was looking for the C one, though.
No,
I was looking for the C. I knew it was like a C word I was looking for.
And by the way, I need to give Captain Lou an assist there. He's the one who stooged it off about it being Rick Rude. I was pretty sure it was Rick Rude who.
Son of a bitch. Well, they were both there at the time. It's all part of the overall gestalt. But thank you very much, guys. And thank you, fans.
Yes, and look forward to you joining us a little bit more often, Howard.
Don't tip the people too much. Don't let us, let our marketing people get their act together first.
Oh, right. The press releases have not gone out yet. I see. Okay, and we still need to shoot that special in Las Vegas.
That's right, man.
That shows us.
Oh, the sky's the limit now. Look out.
Eating pizza and just hanging out. We're, bungee jumping, playing cards, chasing hookers. Anyway. Actually, I think my wife's calling. I got to go. Anyway, we'll be right back with more Kentucky Fried Wrestling right after this.
You guys have got the belts right here. The Southern Tag Team titles. You won them in the tournament. I know you're not happy about what happened after that, though.
Dave, before we start talking about what happened last week, I just, Eddie and myself, we've been doing a lot of thinking, when Jackie called, and he asked us, we had a chance to come back home and be a part of something that it's one of the biggest things in the country. Jackie Fargo, he's known all over the country, and it was a big thing, to come back and especially to get to be one of Jackie Fargo's fabulous ones. But just like I said last week, I don't know, we won the match, we won the belts, but when we was laying there, Norvell and Coco or whatever they want to be called, I don't, that right now I'm talking about something that really it's bothered Eddie and it's bothered me all week. We was laying there, we was both bloody and about half out of it, and we heard some boos, some people booing out in the crowd, and I mean. I've been on both sides of the fence. I mean, everybody ain't going to like you all the time, but it was more than just a few of the people booing, and Eddie and myself, to win them belts, it was, I've won the world heavyweight title at one time. I held that, and that was a big thrill. But to come home to Memphis, Tennessee, and to win the belts, it was the biggest thing that ever happened. And just like I said, we was laying there, and after we got back to the back, we sat in the back for a long time, and we talked about it. And, all we could come up with was that a lot of the people thought we were here trying to replace Steve Keirn and Stanley Lane. Well, that's not what we're here for. That's Eddie Gilbert. I'm Tommy Rich. The name The Fabulous Ones, Jackie Fargo made that name. And as far as Stan and Steve, they were very good friends of Eddie's and mine both. They're the ones that wanted to go to Minnesota, to New York, and travel all over the country. I mean, I've done it, but I wanted to come home and I had a chance. And what I'm saying is, I don't really know what exactly I'm trying to say, but it's like when I was 11 years old, I was 11 years old and my father, he went off and left my mother and me, and I thought, well, nobody can ever take his place. And my mother, after it was over, sure, she's seen some other men, and I kind of held it against the men, I'd go to sleep, and during the night I'd get mad, I'd wake up, and at first I'd be mad at them men. But when I was laying in that ring last week with blood all over me and I heard them people booing, I kind of thought, I realized it wasn't them men's fault that was coming to see my mother. My father, he's the one that left. He's the one that wanted to leave. And so, I mean, it wasn't like they were trying to take his place. He's the one that chose to left. And I don't know if that's the same thing that I mean, it's not that's my family's what I'm trying to say there. But all these people, we come home, we're doing it for Jackie Fargo, but we're doing it for all these people out here too. That's what it's all about. Just like Jackie said, You know, they're the backbone. They're what makes wrestling happen. And all I want to say is that we're not here to take Steve and Stan's place. We're here as Eddie Gilbert and Tommy Rich, and we're going to do it just like it's supposed to be done. And we ain't going to let Jackie down and none of these dead-gone people out here.
Well said, I think, Eddie.
Tommy's right. That's exactly what I've been thinking. But, you know.
And we are back on KFR. I want to thank my tag team partner, Howard Atomic Baum. We'll see if that sticks. Some people have called us the most unlikely duo since Rich and Gilbert, but I think our teamwork has become quite fluid. We're a well-oiled machine, much like Ricky and Robert when they hit the double drop kick.
No hi-hats!
No hi-hats. Absolutely no hi-hats. Honoring the legendary Jackie Fargo. Really upset about those hi-hats, wasn't he? Well, hey, you're going to be upset if you miss out on the new Fabulous Ones t-shirt that we have at MemphisWrestlingTees.com. It's also available on a coffee mug, and it's actually been proven that your coffee will be 28% stronger, Pally, served in a Fabulous Ones cup. It's true. Oh, it's damn true. And we've also got a new classic Jackie Fargo tee that you should check out over at MemphisWrestlingTees.com. It's just a great way, if you're a fan of this podcast, to support the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Scott Bowden. You can follow Brian if you choose, even though he stinks, at Great Brian Last. I just want to take a moment to remind you that Kentucky Fried Wrestling is a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. For Brian Last, Stinky, this is Scott Bowden. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
The announcers on this program are selected and paid by parties other than this station, namely the promoters of Championship Wrestling.